Aria Jensen stepped out of the taxi onto the polished marble entrance of Millennial Tech's downtown headquarters, the late morning sun casting sharp reflections on the glass tower. Her shoulders ached beneath the weight of the small backpack she carried, worn and a little frayed from hurried travel. She wiped a bead of sweat from her brow. Her flight had landed barely an hour ago, and now she was here, her first day on the job, straight from the airport to the heart of this sleek high-rise. The lobby bustled with purpose. Women and men in tailored suits strolled past, their steps echoing crisply on the pristine floors. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint hum of whispered conversations and the tapping of keyboards audible through the glass-walled offices lining the space. Aria adjusted the collar of her blouse. It was simple business casual, nothing flashy, a wrinkle here, a smudge of dirt on her slacks, the telltale signs of hurried decisions more than carelessness. She glanced around. Most eyes avoided her, but a few flickered with quiet judgments, a nod to the unspoken hierarchy. To the polished elites here, she must have looked out of place, a tired traveler clutching nothing but a humble bag, shoulders slightly stooped beneath an invisible burden. A voice broke through her thoughts, a sharp, clipped tone belonging to Cassandra Lee, the veteran vice president of the division. Cassandra's eyes narrowed as she stepped forward, a thin smile curling with condescension. "You must be the temp," she said with a hint of mockery. "Before the meeting starts, run and fetch some bottled water. And make sure there are pens on every seat. We wouldn't want the guest to be unprepared." The assembled executives caught Cassandra's comment like a ripple in still water. Some smirked behind polite masks. Aria felt the weight of that dismissive gaze but said nothing, merely nodded. "Right away," she replied, voice steady despite a flicker of something sharp beneath her calm. Then she turned and walked past them toward the HR offices, determined to find where she really belonged. Aria nodded quietly after Cassandra's dismissive order, suppressing any urge to correct her. "Right away," she said softly, her voice steady but neutral. She turned on her heel, walking briskly past the glass-walled conference room where the polished executives waited. Her footsteps echoed softly against the sleek marble floor as she headed not for the water cooler, but toward the HR department. The hallways of Millennial Tech felt sterile, with glass partitions reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. Yet this was where she needed to be. The thought settled in her mind like a rock. This wasn't some temp role. This was her new domain. She pressed the button on the elevator, riding upward to the 15th floor, where the Human Resources office was located. As the doors slid open, a calm warmth replaced the chill of the lobby. The decor was softer here, muted tones, plush chairs, and the faint aroma of fresh jasmine. Martin Blake, the senior HR director, stood waiting by the reception desk. His broad face broke into a welcoming smile as Aria approached. "Ms. Jensen," he said, stepping forward with outstretched hand. "We've been expecting you. Welcome to Millennial Tech." Aria shook his hand with deliberate calm. "Thank you, Martin." She appreciated the genuine warmth in his tone. It was a stark contrast to the cold reception from Cassandra. Martin gestured toward a private meeting room. "Your schedule is tight today. We've planned an introductory session with your new division's leadership team this afternoon. But first, let's get you settled." Once inside the room, Martin sat across from Aria with a tablet in hand, scrolling through lists and briefing notes. "Your credentials impressed the board," he said. "They're confident your experience at Caltech Innovations and your leadership during the last product launch will inject much-needed vigor here." Aria allowed herself a small smile. It felt oddly surreal. Just an hour ago, she'd been mistaken for a temporary assistant and ordered to fetch water. Now, here she was, heading Millennial Tech's elite tech development division. "Is Cassandra Lee briefing you on the team?" Martin asked, his eyes flicking up. "No, Arya answered evenly. She assumed I was a temp. I'm guessing the message hasn't lined up yet. Martin smirked. That's putting it mildly. Cassandra tends to throw her weight around. Arya nodded. I don't intend to address that formally today. The team will learn what they need, soon enough. Martin's eyes brightened. Good. Your measured approach suits this culture. People respect quiet strength more than loud protests. Arya's thoughts drifted back to the lobby confrontation, but she held them at bay. Instead, she focused on the upcoming meeting. This was her moment to show the team who she was and what she expected. Meanwhile, back at the ground floor office space, Cassandra found an eager ear with her assistant, Jenna. Leaning against the glass wall, Cassandra broadcast her own version of events. The new temp? Easily handled, she whispered to Jenna, tossing her trademark smirk. Had her running to fetch bottled water like a rookie. Honestly, that kebab-scented wanderer doesn't know what hit her. She won't last a week. Jenna giggled. Good play, Cassandra. That'll teach the newbies to show up looking like they're lost. A cluster of mid-level engineers nearby overheard enough to share with colleagues. The narrative spread quickly across departments. A quick-acting Cassandra Lee had kept order before the latest arrival could rattle cages. Within the sleek glass offices and humming open workspaces, whispers circulated about the so-called temp, questioning if she could survive in such a demanding, high-stakes environment. Yet others, less vocal but keen-eyed, sensed there was more beneath the surface. Arya returned from HR with a soft click of determination. She crossed the lobby again, this time heading toward the conference room where the division's leadership gathered. The younger employees, standing near the entrance, glanced her way, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism painted across their faces. For a brief moment, she caught a few eyes and held their gaze firmly, not with arrogance, but steady clarity. Inside the conference room, the air seemed charged with an unspoken tension. The polished executives were seated, laptops open, papers arranged neatly. Cassandra sat near the head of the table, her posture a blend of authority and expectation. Arya paused momentarily just outside the door, drew a deep breath, then entered with measured steps. The murmurs around the room stilled momentarily, curiosity prickling the air. Cassandra's sharp glance cut through the quiet, but Arya didn't flinch. Instead, she walked past and settled into the chair that had been left empty for the division head. Martin soon arrived, opening the meeting with a brisk tone that welcomed everyone and introduced Arya as the new leader. His words were purposeful, carrying weight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Arya Jensen. She comes with extensive experience from Caltech Innovations, where she successfully led complex projects and nurtured teams to excellence. We're excited to have her guiding Millennial Tech's development division. As Martin spoke, Arya settled into her role, allowing none of the earlier dismissal to cloud her demeanor. The room exchanged quick glances, surprise, whispering uncertainties, and respect edging in. Cassandra's expression tightened, lips pressed thin with disbelief, but she said nothing. The meeting went forward, Arya's quiet confidence commanding attention. She spoke clearly, outlined initial expectations, and affirmed that the division's success would depend on transparency and collaboration. Afterward, staff members filtered out of the room, some lingering near Arya to introduce themselves, others pausing to exchange looks of disbelief. The initial judgments forged in the lobby's glare began to shift. Arya understood the game, more work ahead than she'd imagined. Yet already, a small inner flame flickered. Today was just the beginning. The glass conference room hummed with muted voices as the division's leadership team assembled for their regular morning briefing. The crisp, modern space overlooked the city skyline, bathed in cool sunlight that spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows. The mood inside, however, was anything but bright. Whispers flickered like static, uncertainty and tension mixing with gossip and quiet speculation about the new girl, who had arrived in nothing but a simple blouse and slightly rumpled trousers. Aria Jensen sat composed at the head of the table, her posture relaxed but taut with professionalism. Her presence, a quiet but undeniable authority, halved the room's once chattering energy into a tangible silence. Her gaze scanned the faces, some were eager, others expectant, a few openly skeptical. At the far end of the hall, Cassandra Lee's phone buzzed sharply. An incoming message pulled her from her seat with a frown. She met Martin Blake's eyes briefly across the room before rising reluctantly and slipping out, closing the door behind her without a word. Moments later, Cassandra found herself in the HR director's office, a sharp contrast to the gleaming conference room. The space was functional, serious, and far quieter. She paused by the door as Martin sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable yet firm. "Cassandra," Martin began, voice steady. "We need to talk about your conduct this morning." Calling the new division head a temp and assigning menial tasks was wholly unacceptable. Cassandra's defenses tightened, irritation flickered across her features. She acted like she didn't belong here. "I was addressing the team's morale. Setting the tone." Martin shook his head. "You're confusing arrogance with leadership. This division demands respect at every level." His words were incisive, slicing through the usual tangles of corporate diplomacy. Cassandra clenched her jaw but said nothing. "Effective immediately, you're relieved of the leadership role on the Xavier project. Also, you'll attend a leadership training session next week," Martin added crisply. "We expect your full cooperation." Back in the conference room, Aria began the meeting. "Thank you, everyone, for coming on such short notice. I want to begin by briefly outlining our division's priorities and expectations moving forward." She spoke clearly and deliberately, outlining measurable goals and emphasizing collaboration and accountability. "This is a team effort. Success requires transparency in communication and performance." Her words carried weight, its calm authority silencing even the most skeptical. As she outlined her strategy, some team members exchanged glances. There was a subtle but perceptible shift in energy. A fresh sense of purpose bloomed across the room. Later, as the meeting ended, the door opened and Cassandra stepped back in. The usual confident swagger was gone, replaced by a hesitant, guarded demeanor. The room fell silent, all eyes shifting toward her. Aria stood to address her directly, voice even yet firm. "Cassandra, please understand that leadership here is earned through respect and integrity. We all have roles to play." Cassandra nodded tightly, swallowing her pride. The message was unmistakable. Later, when she left the room, her strides were measured but thoughtful. Those watching saw a flicker of reconsideration in her stance, a silent acknowledgement that the dynamics had irrevocably changed. Outside, in the corridors buzzing with activity, whispers turned from derision to cautious optimism. The woman once dismissed as a temp had taken command with quiet strength. Aria's eyes flicked toward the ceiling as she stepped out, exhaling softly. This was just the beginning, but for the first time, she felt the undercurrent of genuine respect beginning to flow. Her journey at Millennial Tech had unofficially begun, and the game was changing. The office settled into an expectant hush as Martin Blake rose to formally introduce Aria Jensen. The glass conference room brimmed with sharp glances and murmured anticipations, but when Martin spoke, the air shifted palpably. "Ladies and gentlemen," Martin began, his tone both respectful and deliberate, "I want to officially welcome Aria Jensen as the new head of our tech development division. Her credentials are exemplary, with over a decade in leadership roles at Caltech Innovations, leading teams responsible for breakthrough products that shaped the industry. She's received multiple innovation awards, notably for her role in launching the Hyperlink series, which redefined wireless communications at scale. Arya sat poised, her demeanor steady and professional, meeting each gaze without a hint of defensiveness or arrogance. The room's earlier mockery seemed to evaporate, replaced by a discreet murmur of acknowledgement. Martin continued, Arya has worked internationally, managing large cross-functional teams, and is known for her strategic vision and ability to bring projects from concept to market with efficiency and innovation. The spotlight shifted smoothly to her now, and she rose gracefully, voice clear and measured. Thank you, Martin. I'm honored to join Millennial Tech and lead a division with so much potential. I believe in straightforwardness, and in valuing substance over style. You might have noticed I arrived in simple attire today. A few eyes flickered with surprise as Arya's gaze swept the room calmly. I came directly from an international strategic retreat, she explained, on minimal rest and without the luxury of time for elaborate preparations. My choice to dress simply was intentional. It allows me to observe people's true character when external appearances are stripped away. It offers insight into genuine teamwork and leadership. Her words landed with quiet authority. She continued, great leadership is not about appearances or loud declarations. It is about integrity, respect, and results. I want to know who among us rises to those challenges. The room grew quieter, the earlier casual sneers giving way to thoughtful silence. Arya paused briefly, then outlined a concise framework for the division, fostering open communication channels, nurturing cross-team collaboration, and instituting transparent performance metrics. Success isn't an individual effort. It's a shared journey, one where every contribution matters. Her tone was firm but fair, balanced with clarity and empathy. She smiled gently. I welcome dialogue and questions, but I expect professionalism and respect in exchanges. Throughout the speech, a few senior team members exchanged glances, nods of approval barely concealed behind polite expressions. As she spoke, the technical charts and projections displayed on screens softened in importance. It was a moment less about data and more about culture change, about resetting expectations after previous missteps. Later, during a brief Q&A, Arya responded to a pointed query regarding her leadership style. I believe in leading by example. Dressing practically today is part of that, showing that results matter more than appearances. I want to encourage a culture where people judge each other for effort and achievement, not for superficial impressions. Her sincerity was evident. When the meeting adjourned, several team members approached her quietly, expressing respect and a shared vision for collaboration. They saw beyond the initial judgment, appreciating the candid humility behind her leadership. Meanwhile, news from HR clarified the picture further. Martin confirmed in a casual conversation that Arya had flown in from an executive retreat overseas just hours before. The minimal prep and tired attire were a result of tight scheduling rather than neglect. It reassured many who had silently questioned the first impression. Among the whispers spreading through the corridors, a distinct new thread emerged: admiration for a leader deliberate in her approach and unafraid to prioritize authenticity over pretense. Even Cassandra, in the solitude of her office, mulled over the day's events. The confident mask she wore began to waver as she recognized the formidable presence Arya commanded without drama. It was clear that judgments based on looks were no longer sufficient. Arya's deliberate simplicity had already become a subtle test of character, for her team, for Cassandra, and for the culture she was determined to nurture. As the office's bustle resumed, an undercurrent of renewal pulsed quietly just beneath the surface, the beginnings of a transformation sparked by a woman who chose strength in authenticity and leadership through humility. A few days after the public introduction, the atmosphere in the tech development division had palpably shifted. The initial murmurs of skepticism had faded, replaced by a cautious but growing respect for Arya Jensen's leadership. The office, with its gleaming surfaces and geometric precision, no longer felt as intimidating or distant. Instead, it began to hum with purposeful energy, tempered by measured confidence. Cassandra Lee sat in the Human Resources conference room, the door closed firmly behind her. Across the polished table sat Martin Blake, his expression firm but professional. The repercussions from her earlier behavior had been swift. "Cassandra," Martin began, "your actions undermined the professionalism we expect and put the division's cohesion at risk. As discussed, you will no longer lead the Xavier project. Additionally, you are required to attend leadership retraining sessions starting next week." Cassandra's jaw tightened. The loss of a high-profile project was a significant blow to her career trajectory, and the prospect of leadership training stirred a reluctant acknowledgement that she had misjudged the situation. "This is not a punishment but an opportunity," Martin added calmly. "Your expertise is valued here, but the manner in which you lead must align with our expectations." Cassandra nodded curtly, the fight momentarily subdued. News of the reprimand diffused through the department like a ripple. The whispered support for Arya grew louder. The woman who had been dismissed as a temp was now the undisputed division head, her authority unquestioned. In meetings that followed, Arya demonstrated sharp strategic insight, guiding discussions with clarity and encouraging collaboration between engineers, designers, and project managers. Her open-door policy invited questions, and her willingness to listen built bridges quickly. Colleagues who earlier had shared amused skepticism found themselves drawn to her approachable yet resolute manner. They appreciated her fairness in assigning responsibilities and her insistence on merit, not favoritism or appearances. One afternoon, as the day wore on and the office rhythms slowed, Cassandra approached Arya's office. The usual confident gait was replaced by tentative steps. She paused briefly outside the door, gathering composure, then knocked softly. Arya looked up from her desk, her expression neutral but attentive. "Come in," she said. Cassandra entered, closing the door gently behind her. "I wanted to apologize," Cassandra began, voice controlled but sincere, "for the way I treated you on your first day. I judged you unfairly, and that was wrong." Arya regarded her calmly and nodded. "Thank you, Cassandra. Respect is earned over time, and I hope we can work together productively." A hint of relief softened Cassandra's features, though her posture remained formal. Their exchange was brief but significant, a silent turning point. There was no grand reconciliation, just a clear understanding that professionalism had to prevail. After Cassandra left, Arya exhaled softly and returned to her work. Her gaze settled on the city skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, an ever-expanding horizon. As she walked through the office later, her posture radiated quietly assured authority. Engineers paused briefly to nod greetings, administrative staff offered subtle smiles, and project leads awaited her guidance with renewed confidence. Arya's command was no longer questioned or undermined. She moved seamlessly through her new domain, a leader shaped not by appearance but by the strength of her character and vision. The day waned into evening as the office lights dimmed one by one, but Arya's presence remained steady, a reminder that true leadership often arrives quietly, dresses simply, and demands respect through actions rather than assumptions.